And yes, I'm biased because I work for Fox. You can accuse me of that all day long. It's true. I want to see the best names, the biggest possible stars that we can. Welcome everyone to the Monday edition of Fair Territory. It's July 1st. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. Always a grand day on the baseball calendar. And the fact that the calendar is turning to July means we've got a very meaningful month ahead. First, the All-Star Game, the baseball draft, the amateur draft takes place that weekend, and then the trade deadline. And today I want to get into a few teams that I've written about lately and that are kind of interesting teams as we go forward here. Now, I'm not going to cover all 30. I'm going to do 3 teams here, just 3. And we'll get to hopefully all of them in due time. So if I'm not talking about your favorite team, don't start yelling at me. We'll get there. But these teams, they're kind of in an interesting situation, to say the least. And I'm going to start with the Boston Red Sox, the team I wrote about today in The Athletic, a team that, in my estimation, should not even be questioning buy or sell. They're the Boston Red Sox. They're a high-revenue team, despite what their ownership might be acting like in any particular moment. And this is a team that if you look at them statistically, and we're going to look at them right now, you'll see what I'm talking about here. The Red Sox, despite all their injuries, with Garrett Whitlock out, with Trevor Story out, with Lucas Giolito out, team ERA 3.64, 8th in the majors. Runs per game, 4.59, 12th in the majors. There are 12 teams that make the playoffs, folks. And their playoff odds, 30.8%. This is a young team. They're going to make mistakes. They know that. They've got a good manager in Alex Cora. They've got a group that is playing better, and Tristan Casas is going to join them after the All-Star break. So what exactly is the problem here? There should be no problem. And ownership, as I've mentioned before on Foul Territory, went into this season kind of not expecting this. And sometimes a team will defy expectations. And sometimes you have to react to what is going on the field. This team is not perfect. They're quite young, and they need help. Starting pitcher would be foremost among the things they could get, a shortstop or second baseman as well. But my point is, the Red Sox should not be sitting idly by as the deadline approaches. Now, I get it if they collapse. Okay, they collapse, you don't buy. Okay. But I don't expect them to collapse. They've been kind of semi-consistent all year in the way they've gone about this. Cora is very confident in this team. He said last week, hey, why are we even talking about the third wild card? Why aren't we aiming higher? Correct. You're the Boston Red Sox. Aim high. Used to be, from 2004 to 2020, you ran top 5 payrolls every year. Now they're around 12th. I'm not saying you got to add a lot of money at the deadline. What I am saying is try. That was the last line in my column. Try. Another team that is in an interesting situation, very, very different from the Red Sox, the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, the Brewers, unlike the Red Sox, are a low-revenue team, a team that traditionally doesn't spend money and traditionally is not very aggressive at the deadline. We wrote about them in our trade deadline watch today, myself, Will Salmon, and Patrick Mooney. And the Brewers are going to do the Brewers. They're going to go about it and try to improve, but they're not going to do anything big, most likely. They're going to try to piece it around the edges. They've already made one minor move, bringing in Dallas Keuchel. They've got 8 pitchers still on the IL. Devin Williams is one of them. He's coming back. That's probably what their big deadline addition will be. They've also had losses of Wade Miley. Brandon Woodruff is not going to get going this season. So they're in a situation where they need a lot of help. And let's look at their particular position, and I'll show you what I mean. The Brewers, in rotation ERA, rank 18th in the majors, 4.21. Actually, it's better than I thought it would be, considering the names that they're running out there, several of whom they never expected to be in the big leagues. Their playoff odds, because they're in first place by 6.5 games in the Central, are 89.8%, almost 90%. But here's the key. As Codified Baseball tweeted recently, the Milwaukee Brewers have already used 14 different starting pitchers this season. That's more than any other Brewers team in any one season in history, because of course it is. Now, I love the Brewers. I love what they do every year. I love that they overachieve. I love that they're doing this without Counsell, without Corbin Burns, when we all thought, well, at least me and some other people thought, that they were going to fall apart. They haven't fallen apart. Pat Murphy is a candidate for National League Manager of the Year. Their position player group is really interesting. Full of young players. Yelich is having a terrific year. They've got Hoskins for veteran stability as well. They're a really good team. I'd love to see them do more, but I don't expect them to do more. That's not how they roll. And this is a team, remember, that on top of everything else, losing Counsell, losing Burns, cut payroll. Cut payroll pretty significantly from the end of last season. They're $30 million down from the end of last season. And yet, here they are again, terrorizing the Cubs and the Cardinals and everyone else in the NL Central. Applause to the Brewers. Just wish you'd do a little bit more. All right, my final team, my beloved Paper Tigers, the Toronto Blue Jays. Wrote about them at the end of last week, and they too are in a rather interesting position. Split with the Yankees over the weekend. Every time they show a little life, they take a step back. That's kind of how their season is going. With the Blue Jays, let's look at their playoff odds as well, because they're not very good, and frankly, this team does not appear to be going anywhere. Runs per game, this is the first thing I want to mention. 23rd in the majors. They're averaging just over 4 runs per game with this dynamic group of hitters. How it's possible, I'm not sure, but it's happening. Their playoff odds right now, 4.6%. Less than 5% chance of making the playoffs. Now, the playoff odds can be a little bit deceiving. They can change in the course of a week pretty dramatically. I get it, and I don't want to overuse them. But people watching the Blue Jays, their fans, media, people around the game, they're not seeing a playoff team here. They're seeing a team that faces a very interesting crossroads. Now, you've got Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. under club control through next season, through 2025. What do you do with them? Do you trade them now, sign them to extensions, or do you try to go forward and push for 2025 and just try again? Just kind of dismiss this year as a bad year. Do you trade some of your expiring assets? Kikuchi would be one, Yimi Garcia would be another, Danny Jansen a third. You can do that. That's just working around the edges, not a big deal. You're not going to get much back, and you can still continue with your season. Or do you do something deeper? Do you maybe move a Bichette and or Guerrero? And do you go beyond that and maybe talk about your starting pitching in a market where teams are begging to acquire starters? It's a really complicated situation because the team president, Mark Shapiro, is under contract for only 1 more year, and the general manager, Ross Atkins, for only 2 more. So they may look at this and say, we don't want to give up. We don't want to acknowledge how badly we failed. We want to take one more shot with this team. Bring back Bichette, bring back Guerrero, see what happens in 25, and then if they walk, and go like that. That, to me, is not the way to go. This team needs to be retooled, in my estimation, and you can maybe do it quickly if you trade the right pieces. Guerrero, right now, would be the best hitter available. Pete Alonso, we don't even know if he's going to be traded. My guess is no, the way the Mets have played. Much better of late. So Guerrero would be the guy. Bichette, different story. You're selling low on him a little bit. I wrote about this today, or we wrote about this in the trade deadline watch. But at the same time, you could sell the Dodgers on him, probably get something pretty decent in return. Do you trade those guys now and then maybe open starting pitchers as well and get all these young kids back to supplement what you have? Your system isn't very good. So if you stay the course, if you bring back Vlad and bring back Bo Bichette next year, you probably lose them after 25. Your system is no better. And you're kind of in the same spinning your wheels mode. If I'm the Blue Jays, I'm taking a hard look at where we are, and I'm saying, you know what? It's time for us to do some things. And with regard to job security, if that's what management is worried about, okay, I get it. Understandable. But at the same time, what a general manager, what a team president, what everyone involved in an organization is supposed to do, even when their jobs are on the line, is think of the organization first. Do what is best for the organization. It's not that complicated. Playoff odds of less than 5%. The Blue Jays' course should be clear. Time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I talk about a story I've written, a trend in the game, I don't know, anything that might come to mind. This week, I've got a good, hot topic. My all-star selections. I published them Friday in The Athletic, and as usual, got a very, I wouldn't call it violent response, I wouldn't even call it vehement, but a passionate response. Let's call it passionate. And what's interesting about this year's game is that we're missing a number of stars right off the bat. Ronald Acuna Jr., Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, even Yamamoto. A lot of these guys won't be playing. Some other players, I think of Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Garrett Cole, they either haven't been available enough or playing well enough to be in the game. So we're going to see a lot of new faces. And given that there will be so many absences, you would think that choosing the 64 All-Stars would not be much of a problem. Just find these guys, find the replacements. Actually, it's a very big problem. There are so many good players in this sport, so many players who deserve to be All-Stars. It is indeed difficult to sort through and try to figure out who actually should be on the team if you're following the rules, that every team should be represented, etc., etc. So the way I go about this, it's kind of a hybrid of deserving players based on their first halves and players who are big stars and who I just believe should be in the game. Now, keep in mind, this game is an entertainment vehicle. It's a promotional thing for the sport. It's on Fox, where I work, and the people involved at Fox, the people involved at MLB, they want the sexiest showcase. So a guy who is having a hot first half but might not be very well known or is kind of coming out of nowhere, maybe a journeyman who's doing that, I don't know that I would prioritize him over a player who is a bigger name, might not be having the best first half, but is a guy that fans would want to see. And not just fans of your particular favorite team, fans across the country. It's a national event, a showcase event, a jewel event for Major League Baseball. So that's my theory going in, and I try to adhere to it, but obviously when you go about it that way, or actually any method you might choose, you're going to leave some worthy players out. Now, as an example of how I think this game should work, I've got Paul Skeens on my team, my National League pitching staff. A lot of fans might say, whoa, he's not deserving. He barely has pitched in the majors. He just got here. But to me, Paul Skeens is one of the biggest names in the sport right now. I love watching him pitch. Fans who have not seen him pitch, I believe, will love watching him pitch too. That's one example. Another example, Manny Machado. Now, of course, Manny is a controversial figure. A lot of people don't like him. I get it. But Manny Machado is one of the biggest stars in the game, okay? And Manny Machado is a guy that didn't have a great start to his season. He was coming off surgery and it just wasn't really right. But in the month of June, got hot, played like Manny Machado, and the Padres have been a pretty decent surprise in my estimation, and he's a big part of it. He plays all the time. Guy rarely takes a day off, if ever. So on my National League team, it came down to Manny Machado versus Joey Ortiz for the final third base spot. Joey Ortiz unquestionably has been one of the Brewers' best players, one of the biggest surprises in the game, a guy who was part of the Corbin Burnes trade and is a really interesting and deserving candidate. But again, some players, you can't include them all. And that's where Joey Ortiz did not make it for me. The way I looked at it regarding third base in the National League, I had Alec Boehm, who was playing great for the Phillies and likely will be the leading vote getter, and I had Machado. Now, part of the problem with the infield in the National League was that I had to account for teams that weren't represented. CJ Abrams of the Nationals, on. Francisco Lindor of the Mets was my only Mets All-Star. Ezequiel Tovar from the Rockies was my only Rockies All-Star, and these guys were all shortstops. I had Ellie De La Cruz on there, my only Reds representative. That's 4 shortstops, so I only took 2 third basemen. And this is how it works. It's a numbers game in a very real sense, and you're trying to pick between guys, and it's not easy. The most difficult selections this year, in my opinion, will be, and we're going to see this play out, National League pitching staff. I want to show you who I picked, and then I'll tell you about who I left off, and you'll be appalled to see who isn't on this list. All right, here's my list. Ranger Suarez from the Phillies, he didn't have a great start yesterday, I know, but he's been amazing. Tyler Glasnow from the Dodgers also had a bad start this weekend, but equally amazing. Sonny Gray, Ryan Helsley, one of my 3 relievers. Shota Imanaga, I don't know that anyone would argue with that. Max Fried recovered from a bad start, still one of the best pitchers in the game. Ronaldo Lopez has been arguably the best starter in the game. Chris Sale, also from the Braves. Tanner Scott, he's my Marlins representative. Paul Skeens, I mentioned him earlier. Robert Suarez, brilliant closer for the Padres. And Zach Wheeler from the Phillies. Now, that's a pretty good group. I don't know that anyone would argue that that's a decent group. But here's who I left off. Christopher Sanchez, second in the league in ERA, just signed the contract extension with the Phillies. I wasn't going to have their whole rotation on there, but is he deserving? He's absolutely deserving. Gavin Stone, the Dodgers, third in the league in ERA, might be the Dodgers' best pitcher or most consistent pitcher in the first half. Dave Roberts said over the weekend he's been one of their three most valuable players in the first half. Also, Logan Webb. Now, he is 10th in the league in ERA, but he's been a consistent, really good pitcher for quite some time now. I don't know that he's ever been an all-star, and of course, he is deserving. Now, here's the good news. For all the people who get upset, all the people, Twins fans yelling for Willie Castro, Brewers fans yelling for Joey Ortiz, Giants fans who thought I should have picked Elliot Ramos over Patrick Bailey. Okay, here's the good news. The good news is players are going to drop out. Players are going to get injured. All hell's going to break loose, as it always does once the selections are announced. And we'll see, in the end, 75 to 80 All-Stars, accounting for 10% of all Major League players. 10% will be All-Stars. So most everyone who should get in will get in. Don't be too upset. You can be upset with me, but don't be too upset in general, because it's all going to work out. Time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where I answer your questions. Let's get right to it. First question today comes from Tommy Wright, who asks, has any GM done a better job than AJ Preller? Forced to cut $80 million in payroll, he gave roles to Matt Waldron, Jurickson Profar, Jackson Merrill, Jeremiah Estrada, Rule 5 pick Stephen Kolek, and added Dylan Cease and Luis Arias. Tommy, this is an excellent question, and you put it all together really well. AJ Preller, I know I've been hard on him in the past at times because I haven't liked the way he's constructed his rosters, but this is maybe his best performance. And all of those names you mentioned, it's really impressive. I'll go through them. Estrada, that reliever who had that great run earlier this season, he was a waiver claim from the Cubs. Kolek, you mentioned him, Rule 5 pick from the Mariners. Matt Waldron, and I didn't even realize this until I looked it up, he was the player to be named in the Mike Clevenger trade. If you remember that trade, the Padres got Clevenger and Greg Allen and a player to be named. Turned out to be Matt Waldron. They gave up a ton. It wasn't a great trade for them. Josh Naylor was one of 6 players that went back to Cleveland. Gabriel Arias is also in that group, Cal Quantrill. It was a trade in which they probably ultimately will come out on the negative side, but maybe Waldron evens it all out. I don't know. So all of that, and Jackson Merrill, a draft pick that they've kept, 27th overall in 2021, a kid that was an infielder. They converted him to center field and has been brilliant, a leading candidate for NL Rookie of the Year. So yes, Preller, amazing job so far, and of course, he is not done yet. He is active right now, perhaps the most active GM in seeking help for his team, which currently holds the second wild card with a 2.5 game cushion over the Mets. So the Padres are in really good shape right now, even with all the problems that they've had, the injuries to Darvish and Musgrove and now Tatis. It's a really impressive showing by Preller and by his manager, Mike Schilt. Let's go to our next question. This one comes from Travis Vimos, who asks, do you see the Astros overtaking the Mariners and winning the division this year? Travis, you ask a question that is on a lot of fans' minds right now. And let's look at what the Astros have done. 2 months ago, would I have expected them to be in this position? Absolutely not. They started the season 7-19. But in June, without Kyle Tucker, with Kyle Tucker playing only 2 games, they went 17-8. They've won 9 of their last 10. They're over 500, finally. And the Mariners are sputtering. They've lost 8 of 11. This is kind of their first tough stretch of the season. They are a little challenged offensively. And when you ask, can I see the Astros overtaking them? Well, we've seen the Astros year after year after year do this. They are playing at a high level right now. They've got some injured starting pitchers that will come back. Not all of them, but some. So I do expect them to be the team to beat in the AL West. And one more thing on that division. What is really surprising is where the Rangers are. They just have not clicked this season. And there's a big game last night on Sunday Night Baseball. I get it. But overall, that's a team that's been a huge disappointment. I still expect them to kind of make a push here, but it's going to be really interesting to see how the West plays out. All right, our final question. This one comes from Jason Beshore, who asks, Seth Lugo, leading the league in wins and ERA, should he be the starting pitcher for the All-Star game at the moment? All right, Jason, I'm going to go back to what I said in my Inside Dish segment about All-Star selections and how I view them, how I think they should go down. Seth Lugo, you can strongly make a case that he has been the best pitcher in the American League in the first half. Statistically, you can definitely make that case. But I have a problem with starting a guy who's basically a converted reliever in his second year of starting, who is not a big name. I have a problem with that kind of pitcher starting the All-Star game. You want the bigger names. Now, the American League actually doesn't have a group of great names excelling as starting pitchers this season, but the guy I would go with is Corbin Burnes. He's been nearly as good as Lugo. He is a potential free agent at the end of the season. He was part of a big trade. He's won a Cy Young. He's a guy that is sexier and a guy that if fans were tuning into the game would say, whoa, Corbin Burnes, okay, let's go. I'm not discounting what Seth Lugo has accomplished, and I love Seth Lugo and what he's done. It's a cool story. He always wanted to be a starter, became a starter, and proved that he had the goods to do that job. But the way I see the All-Star game, I just believe bigger names should be involved at the start of the game. And yes, I'm biased because I work for Fox. You can accuse me of that all day long. It's true. I want to see the best names, the biggest possible stars that we can. Thanks to everyone for your questions. Thanks to everyone for watching, for listening. You know where to find us: YouTube, Apple, Spotify. One programming note this week. We will be doing our second show of the week, the one I do live with Alana Rizzo, on Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern. Usually that show is on Thursday, but Thursday is July 4th. We're going to observe the holiday. So tune in Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern. I'll be here with Alana, and we'll be breaking it all down.
Once a day, you can play the free BetMGM Swing for the Fences game. Chance to win daily prizes. You play as the batter, you pick an area of the strike zone, and then you see what happens. And BetMGM Sportsbook account holders who play the game will have the opportunity to win a reward if they get a hit. Rewards include odds boost tokens, parlay boost tokens, and bonus bets, among other rewards. And all of those rewards, when you get them, expire in 24 hours. Gambling problem or concern? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey everybody, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Fair Territory airs each week, and we'd love for you to become part of our community. Here's another video you might enjoy. See you next time.